Hey everyone, my name is Chris Lambert, and on this channel we talk Kanye West. And today we're talking Kanye going to Haiti unexpectedly. But I think we can surmise what reason that was for, as well as some news stories regarding Kanye. Recently, Kanye's been tweeting so much that a lot of the channel has just been responding to Kanye's tweets and explaining them. So we're going to step back a little bit today and look more at how people have been responding to Kanye and looking more at it from that angle. But here we have Kanye in Haiti, and you can see he has his 2020 hoodie on with his mask, looking a little bit like Rain from Mortal Kombat, right? Almost like he's cosplaying as Rain. So for you Mortal Kombat fans out there, but Kanye, you can see, where's the hoodie? They had tweeted, oh yeah, here, 2020 hoodie. There it is. Even has the Kanye 2020 vision label on it. But you can see here that Kanye was meeting with the Haitian president, Jovenel Moise, and that Naomi Osaka, the tennis star, was actually in the airport at the same time, though Kanye and the president ended up going off on their own. And it was reported here by Ticket Magazine that Kanye arrived at the Cap Haitian airport today, where he waited for President Moise, who was to accompany him to Labadee and Turtle Island, which I found out Turtle Island is Tortuga. For any of you people that were fans of pirates back in the day or have watched the Pirates of the Caribbean movies, Tortuga is always such like a striking name that it's just like, oh, he went to the pirate land of Tortuga, which it's not quite there, but we'll get to Tortuga soon. Anyway, you can see that Kanye is kind of going around with the president, and you may be asking, like, why? Why is Kanye going to Haiti? And just last week, he was in Jamaica, which caused a little bit of a stir for the fact that international travelers are supposed to quarantine, and Kanye got there, went to the quarantine area, then went off to a studio. We talked about the picture of Kanye in the studio with a Jamaican artist, and they're smiling with their masks off, which is another thing that breaks the quarantine rules and laws in Jamaica right now. And people are kind of upset about that, and maybe a little bit of the special treatment that Kanye got. I don't know if it matters at all that Kanye says that he had COVID already. And as far as we know, not to stir any feathers, that people can't get reinfected at this point or don't carry it in the same way once they have had COVID. So I don't know if that makes a difference for why Kanye could remove his mask or anything like that. But yeah, people were upset about his visit to Jamaica because of that. But Kanye is probably going to these places because the idea of like agriculture and growth and development are such focal points in communities like Haiti and Jamaica right now. And essentially, for a lot of reasons, just because they didn't have a lot of the materials for a long time to have the kind of industrialization that we've seen in other countries like England, like Australia, like a lot of parts of South America, North America, the United States, right? But now they're finally starting to have a lot more industrialization and a lot more development, but they're able to do those things in the 21st century, which changes a lot of the methodology, right? Rather than it being done in the 18th century, like 1800s, 1900s, it's being done now. And that's one of the things that Kanye is interested in. He's talked about how in Wyoming, he wants to build a city. He wants to build sustainable communities. He wants to build an orphanage. He wants to build the Yeezy Christian Academy campus. And you can see here that the campus itself has a learn, play, farm, grow, and has apples, grapes, and oranges. I'm guessing like orchards for all of those things. But Kanye even has kind of his prototype Yeezy Christian Academy location where he's currently growing a bunch of crops on an auxiliary property in Calabasas. And he tweeted out what looked like a track list, but was just these like folders for all of his different kinds of crops, like the types of nightshades, citrus, allium, leafy greens. Fish aren't crops, kind of. I guess you can have a crop of fish, but they're sustainable, right? Same way that sheep and goat are kind of sustainable. And more natural rather than processing everything. You can stock a lake with fish and keep having fish. So I feel like Kanye is going to these places to see how they've been developing and what they've been doing, and maybe even looking to partnership, because you're looking at places that are developing rather than places that have developed. And there's an opportunity for someone like Kanye to come in and be part of that development process and learn things along the way before taking that back to whatever he's doing. We know that Kanye is a big fan of partnerships, even going back to like How Sway, right? In the interview with Sway's like, why do you need partnerships with these bigger places? Why don't you just do it yourself? And Kanye's just like, how? Like, it seems easier when you have the backing of these places that have the resources, have the leverage, have, I guess, reputation that carries a lot of weight. So Kanye potentially either just getting education here or looking to partner in some way is an interesting development either way. And you can see that Moise, in 2012, he founded the Agritrans, introduced the agricultural project Noribio, and helped create Haiti's first agricultural free trade zone, a 2,500 acre banana plantation in Nord-Est. With this project, Moise was able to successfully cultivate unfarmable land into a lush, integrated, and sustainable project that is a model for development of Haiti's agricultural sector. Through this project, Haiti was able to export organic bananas to Germany for the first time since 1954. This led Moise to be nicknamed Banana Man, and to more than a dozen agricultural projects that created almost 3,000 direct jobs and 10,000 indirect jobs. So definitely seems like somebody that Kanye would want to talk with at the very least, right? Learn something from, pick his brain a little bit about how he went about this, the pitfalls of it, the key components that made it successful, and go from there. So we'll see what he does from this trip. It also talked, about Labadee and Tortuga, and you can see here that Labadee in Haiti ends up being like very touristy. Like a lot of cruise ships go over there. It's very geared towards tourists. You have these zip lines, right? You have these slides, you have swings. It seems very like an Instagram playground kind of thing. So you have that. And then Turtle Island, or Tortuga as it is, you can see here just a pretty simple island, but it was one that kind of has a rich history of conquest. The English, Spanish, and French all kind of rotated ownership of the island throughout the mid 1600s until piracy kind of fell by the wayside and it became a little less contentious. But because of that legacy in the mid 1600s, it kind of has stuck in pirate lore and just conversations in general. And you can see here there's even a map from the 17th century, right? Which is kind of wild. You can see all the ships, the different settlements on the islands. It's an interesting way of drawing maps. But now it doesn't have as many pirates, which is a shame. But if you've ever seen the Pirates of the Caribbean movies, you might have a little bit of a soft spot for Tortuga. And so that brings us to the news articles, and we'll keep up with Kanye's Haiti trip and anything that comes out of it. But we have Variety here talking about Kanye West ideas about the music industry. Are they really that unthinkable? Label Execs Weigh In by Jeff Mayfield. And it's interesting to me because I saw somebody on Twitter that's in the music industry, also a journalist, and he was saying that he was pretty upset with outlets covering Kanye's gripes with the music industry and his efforts to change the industry, because this guy saw it as something that was very disorganized, and the fact that Kanye hadn't dropped an album, the disorganization of his presidential campaign, should we really be looking to him as the person to run point on this? And why is the media giving him this attention and taking it seriously and kind of chastising them for it? Despite any conversation that's coming out about it or people agreeing with Kanye, he just seemed, for the fact that it's Kanye West in this current day and age, having this stance, it was somehow wrong. But a lot of the articles I've been seeing from places like Variety and Rolling Stone have been very thoughtful in their approach to it. And everybody kind of in the industry who has been spoken to about it, from at least what I've read, have also defended things that Kanye has said. It just seems that there's some people on Twitter that are against it just because of Kanye's association with it. But this article was interesting just in the fact that it recaps a lot of what we had seen, right? And I'm sure if you're watching this channel, you're familiar with Kanye tweeting out his contract, right? And also his tweets at Universal Music Group and the Vivendi group that owns Universal Music and the Belair group that owns Vivendi. And Kanye just kind of working his way up the food chain, trying to talk to somebody about contracts. And he actually was able to get into a conversation with Joel Katz, who's the most powerful, arguably, attorney in music. And he had a meeting scheduled with Joel Katz and Jeff Harleston, who's Universal Music's EVP and general counsel. And Kanye actually tweeted this out where it was a conversation that the three of them were having, and Jeff ends up bowing out, saying, "Dear Kanye and Joel, due to the pending litigation between Kanye and UMG, I've been advised by counsel that I cannot engage in a direct conversation with you, Kanye, at this time. I'm sorry, best Jeff," which did not sit well with Kanye. Kanye was clearly upset in the fact that, like, you can't even have a conversation with me about this general idea and how we can change things just because I have litigation with Universal Music Group. And I get Jeff's perspective on it too. He has a career. He feels a loyalty to UMG due to his position. He has his reasons for falling in line, to put it. But I also get Kanye being upset with the fact that somebody can't even have a conversation with him by these made up rules that society's agreed to. And it's these same made up rules that they use to enforce things on people that keep people repressed, whether that's in bad contracts or in bad, like, socioeconomic situations in the world. Like, everything about society, not to get too existential, but everything we have in society is just made up, right? Like, all the laws, all the rules that we have, unless it's like science, it's made up. It's just what we've agreed upon, but it doesn't mean that it has to be that way or should be that way or will be that way in the future. So for Kanye, who's such a futurist and such somebody that's looking to break things down, talking to somebody that wants to follow the status quo is probably, like, infuriating. But Boo, Kanye's manager, had also talked about Kanye is going to deliver a more formal manifesto, they're calling it, about what he wants from the music industry and how he thinks contracts should be, how he thinks the artist-label relationship should be. And Kanye had tweeted out some suggestions about how artists should own their copyright and just lease it to the labels, how that should be an 80-20 split, contracts should be plain English, and some of these other things, especially involving like a portal and how artists are shown the money that they're making rather than having to rely on these, I guess, outdated modes of information where you're not seeing in real time how much money you're getting, because you know that these big companies are seeing in real time how much money they're getting, but the artists are kind of kept in the dark. And whenever somebody's kept in the dark about their money, shady shit can happen. And then West had given back 50% share of his masters for the masters that he owns from good music artists, right? It seems that he has a 50-50 split with Universal Music Group, we're assuming, or maybe there's that split another percentage, but he has 50% ownership of anybody that's been signed to good music. So that means Kid Cudi's albums like Man on the Moon. That means Big Sean's albums. Kanye owns 50% of those, and he's going to return that 50% as an act of goodwill. So you can see that Steve Rifkin, longtime label exec and friend of West, I think he wants Universal to treat him the way Adidas and Gap are treating him, and he wants to help Universal, not only for himself, but to help the other big record companies from a creative standpoint. I feel the record companies have to get creative again and develop artists again, and that's why the artists aren't respecting the labels anymore. Name one artist who is truly happy. Yeah, artists have a lot of gripes over label stuff right now. And then Boo said, I think that if record companies don't take the right position, they're going to be on the wrong side of history because artists have the tools today to do without them. The labels are healthy today, but let's talk about the long haul. The artists are more awakened today than they were 30 years ago and have more resources. You could sit back and say, we're healthy, we're good, but if you don't see a storm coming, then eventually it's going to flood over your whole city. And then it talks about how The recording industry in 2019 showed US labels enjoying a fourth straight year of double-digit growth, with a 13% gain lifting the industry's retail value to $11.1 billion, which is a lot of money. But at the same time, it was kind of shocking to me to think about Yeezy is currently valued at like $3 billion. So just some shoes, right? Some shoes, but just like Kanye's small amount of shoes that he's released relative to like Nike, Adidas, Puma, and other companies, it's just he has a value that's a third of or a fourth of the entire music industry or North American music industry. That's pretty wild. And it says the music business was enjoying its most vigorous growth since the 90s. And there was a dip there in the 2000s where everybody was worried like, oh, CDs are going to die. The music industry is going to die. Digital. How's anybody going to make money? Well, they found a way. But that's part of the problem, right? The turnaround has been fueled by streaming, which accounted for 79% of the revenue last year and grew to 85% during this year's first 6 months. So streaming accounts for 85% of the industry's money, which I think for business-minded people, you usually don't want to put all your eggs in one basket like that. You want a more even distribution because if anything fails, it doesn't cripple you. But in this case, if streaming were to somehow get compromised, these labels are going to be screwed. But while senior management at two of the major parent companies declined to comment on West's proposals, industry observers note that the industry's growth streak has put leading creatives in the driver's seat, with top-tier artists and writers commanding better dollars and terms than before. As Epic Records chairwoman Sylvia Rohn recently told Variety, things have changed over the last 2 or 3 years. All the contracts are much more pro-ownership than they've ever been before. It's the fair thing to do, which that's a nice stance. But, it's the contracts that are starting now, not the contracts historically that people can't get out of. Ishan Bolden, SVP of A&R at Warner Records, understands West's desire, but defends the label's role in creating value for artists. It's an important conversation to have about owning your masters. Personally, I believe in partnerships. I believe in creating value for the masters that you own, and you need partners to do it. You need financial backing to some level. You need resources. You need a partner. But that's the whole problem. Like right now, the label owns 100% of those masters. It's not a partner really in that way. It's we own your work, and you're really only helping us because we're going to give you a little bit of every dollar that we squeeze out of this. Chris Anokutes, who's worked in the major label system for 2 decades as an A&R executive for Katy Perry and Fifth Harmony, says it was only recently that he realized how unfavorable contracts are to artists with customary clauses that no longer correlate to today's music market. For example, distribution fees, a remnant from the CD and early vinyl eras in which a label subtracts 24% from an artist's royalty for trucking physical product. He also takes issue with an added expense for international, noting that today's music groups are all operating globally as opposed to territory by territory, like in the old days, and for other forms of pipeline money, as he calls it. Yeah, there's a lot of, this is what Kanye was talking about too, that there's all these fees and like, I think even specifically called out distribution fees as something where it's just like, you're nickel and diming me. You're finding ways to like add these costs in. They keep you making more money than you should and keep me making less money than I should. You're either part of the solution or part of the problem. By virtue of working within the major system, I was part of the problem, says Chris, who's fully embraced the independent roots, taking his TikTok sensation client Curtis Waters to Germany-based indie BMG and leaving offers from the majors on the table. It's a hard thing to say, I don't believe in how you do business. Only they have the power to change, and until they do, I'm going to succeed without them. Yeah, and then Mercushi, God, this is, what an episode. Mercuriadis, CEO and founder of Hypnosis Songs Fund, who is one of the attendees at the West Cats meeting, says, Kanye is an extraordinary creator who has not only made some of the most influential, important, and successful music of the last 20 years, but he has also changed and made culture that has grossed billions. When he speaks, we have a responsibility to pay attention, and the spirit of his thesis is something that anyone who genuinely cares about artists and music cannot possibly argue against, which is a really strong position to take. Merc, as we've talked about on a couple episodes now, or a couple videos. Hypnosis Songs Fund is literally like a investment group into music. They trade publicly based on the value of the holdings of the songs that they own. So they purchase catalogs of music from artists or specific songs from artists, and then find ways to monetize those songs, which then increases the value of their portfolio, which then increases what their shareholders receive, which is like next level. I don't think anybody's ever done that before, like found a way to put art on the stock market in that way. It's kind of like incredible. So yeah. And then Richard Burgess, president and CEO of American Association of Independent Music, says he sees merit in some of West's ideas, but finds others impractical. He agrees, for example, that contracts should be simplified and written in plain English, and that equity earned by a label should be shared fairly with artists, as per the independent sector's Fair Digital Deals Declaration, promulgated by Worldwide Independent Network and other independent trade associations, which essentially is like Universal was able to leverage the power of their catalog, right? Which is just the work of all these artists, in order to get all these millions of shares of Spotify, and able to make money, not just from the Spotify deal that they have and the streaming revenue that they get, but also on top of that, the actual stock in Spotify. But the artist didn't get any of that equity that Universal got. It just went to Jeff Harleston, right? And other people that work at Universal and the people that have stock in Universal, but it doesn't go to the artists. It's not like, I don't know, Kanye's getting $1,000 check from the Spotify investment. No. So that's one of the issues that he has. Rather than loans, Burgess says, oh yeah, the concept of an artist owning masters on a short-term deal, Burgess says, is a negotiable situation. If an artist has the leverage to strike such a deal, it might be possible, but a one-year term would, in many cases, make the ROI insufficient to warrant renting the copyrights. Similarly, he notes that an 80-20 split is already possible on even more favorable terms. The service provider has to evaluate the ROI, which will limit, it sounds robotic. And Burgess suggests advances more like venture capital. If the record fails and a label does not recoup its investment during the term of the artist's deal, the artist does not have to repay the loan. The real question might be whether full recoupment of all costs from the artist share on a royalty deal is right for a particular artist, or whether they might be more comfortable. I think that's something where you might still give an artist a $2 million advance, but instead of that having to be paid off before you can finish your contract or something like that, it's just you hope to recoup over 4 years, and if that's not possible, then it's not possible, and the label just moves on and the artist moves on, rather than kind of locking them in until the recoupment occurs. But in a telling understatement about the battle between West and the majors that has seemingly just begun, ethics barely factor. Yeah, I thought that was kind of the key line. Like, I feel like Kanye's coming at this from an ethical perspective about what's right and wrong, and you can see very much here that this Burgess guy is just like, nah, it's about return on investments and logic. And you're going to have that battle between the heart and the money. So we'll see how that progresses. And then here, I don't like giving over to Kim-Kanye relationship drama, especially when so many of these sites are gossipy in nature, right? Like Complex, Hot New Hip Hop just had articles about like Kim's considering divorce, but their source was Page Six. Page Six is one of the like stupidest gossip columns that there is. It's often proved illegitimate and often has stories that are just completely made up in the way that a lot of tabloids do. But people take it seriously because they sometimes report on things that did happen. But that doesn't mean everything that they do report on that's speculating is right. So you pepper in some of those real things like this actually happened. So then when you speculate, people think that you have a little bit more credibility, but they have no credibility, zero credibility. It's not TMZ. It's not, which as like scummy as TMZ is, TMZ still has a shockingly good track record. But E! Online tends to be like a sound horn. I don't know, is that a megaphone for the Kardashians? I feel like that's something we can all kind of agree on. I don't think that they're going to be publishing articles that the Kardashians are against or that are made up when the Kardashians are such a huge part of E! News, right? Or E! Entertainment. So for them to have an article just saying where Kim Kardashian and Kanye West relationship stands now in the wake of these stories that are coming out about Kim considering divorce feels to me more like the plant to get the counter information out there, right? Rather than Kim or Kanye or somebody else like coming out and making a statement, as they've had to do in the past, because these rumors have gone wild for 8 years now, or however long it's been. It's just insane, like how they don't stop, and you still have outlets like Complex and Hot New Hip Hop that will take tabloids seriously. But to have E! Just come through with a story that's like, yeah, they're still happy. The couple still makes time for one another when they can, but they aren't strangers to spending periods of time apart because they're both so busy. Couples go through ups and downs, but Kim and Kanye have love for one another that others can't always see. So all those rumors about, oh, divorce is imminent seem thrown to the side by this article that's just like, their relationship's fine. And this to me feels more like a drop from the source itself telling them like, hey, get this counter story out there. That's speculation on my part, and that could be wrong, but I think we should trust this much more than Page Six and sources coming from Page Six. Okay, and then People, which I'm not so hot on People anymore these days. I tend to think that they have gone more the route of Page Six and lost a lot of the prominence that they had in the 90s and early 2000s. But this seemed like a pretty good overview of the last 3 months of Kanye's campaign. And they do seem to speak with somebody that's not just like an unnamed source. I mean, it is an unnamed source, but this article has a bit more of a feel of journalism about it than a lot of their usual efforts. So if you're just looking for a rundown of Kanye's political campaign and the drama over the last few months, then this is probably the most balanced recap that I've seen without going like so far to like the left or so far to the right. So a decent article, decent recap. And this was by who? Sean Newman. And then here, T.I. has a lot to say about politics, Kanye West, Tory Lanez, new music, and more. And where's Kanye? Yeah, down here. You've been outspoken about Kanye's politics and run for president in the past, but have you had any thoughts about the recent conversation he started regarding music labels and ownership? And remember, T.I. in 2018 was a vocal critic of Kanye putting on the red hats and even went out to have a in-person conversation with Kanye. And that resulted in the song Ye versus the People, which I like more than it seems anyone else in the world. But both of them were kind of speaking their perspectives and points of view. T.I. has been friendly with Kanye and also critical of Kanye, sometimes a little less understandably than others. But hearing his perspective on this, I think, was fascinating. He says, yeah, Kanye is absolutely correct. He's absolutely correct in what he's saying. I think they've been able to operate in silence due to a lack of knowledge and information, a lack of awareness within our communities about the value of publishing, the value of net profit deals and joint ventures and P&Ds and the ownership of masters. This was the key paragraph. You've got to think about it. Hip hop is a young genre. When we first got in, we didn't even know you could get paid for this shit. You dig? It took the first generation of motherfuckers to actually find out, oh, it's some money in this shit. Then we had to find out where all the money comes from. And if you ain't used to money, if you're a kid that's struggling with his money and a motherfucker gives you 100,000, shit, that's money to you. But it takes experience and generations. Russell Simmons showed us how to monetize the art form. And then you got people like Jay Prince from Rap-A-Lot, Master P and Jay-Z, among others, that showed us you get paid off of shows and you get paid off of royalties. You don't have to just take what they give you. You don't have to take money just because they offered it to you. You can decline the upfront money for a greater percentage of the back end and bet on yourself. Then we learned, wait a minute. Now, once you get to a certain point, you might not even really need the record labels no more. You can go your own masters. You can own your own masters, go direct to consumer. As the world has evolved, the industry has evolved in the age of technology. It has offered more information and more opportunities and more alternatives to how we release our music, record our music, and how we participate in the growth of our brand. From merch to ancillaries. Travis just did a motherfucking McDonald's deal. That shit is unheard of. So, yeah, everything Kanye's saying is absolutely true. If he's got enough money to buy his masters back and he's asking Universal, what do I need to give you all to buy my masters? And they won't even give him a number, that's slavery. That's some bullshit. And now in today's age where everybody's trying to make sure that they're being fair and just and reasonable to people of color who have been ostracized, marginalized, discriminated against, kept away from the table and out of the rooms where money was being discussed and shit, it's been happening for so long. There are so many distributors now that are taking public stances. Oh, we want to make sure that we're contributing to the cultural diversity of our executive stands, of our boards. And that's contrary to some of the prefaces that these contracts have. Yeah, so pretty like vocal support of Kanye and a pretty great rundown of how the industry is developing and growing and how just the understanding within the hip hop genre is changing and growing. I mean, it really, as a monetized art form, was like the late 70s, early 80s that was starting to get going, and the 90s where the money really started rolling in from the deals with like Sprites, right, and other like corporate entities finally getting involved. And then you had the branding, then you had ownership, like Jay-Z getting into champagne or Diddy getting into, what was it, vodka, gin, one of those. Tequila, whatever that, but getting his ownership stake in that and the money coming through those outlets to now getting back to we should own our music and what that means. This is just part of the evolution of the business of hip hop and the business thinking of hip hop artists that we've been seeing over the last 40 years, 50 years. And it's reached a point where like, yeah, we now can recognize how bad of a deal we have with these record labels and we want a better deal. It's time to renegotiate. And then lastly, it's me. Hey, look at that. Look at that handsome devil. Complex News did a story, Kanye West and the Birthday Party, a third-party phenomenon. And they released it as part of a Complex World and Complex News. And they came and interviewed me. I had a camera like and sound guy here that were all set up, and Speedy from Complex asked me a handful of questions. So if you want to watch this 17-minute documentary about Kanye's political campaign, you can see they speak to a number of different people. I have, a minute and 30 seconds in here. I come in at 6:30. So if you're just watching for me, 6:30 to 8 minutes, and you get all the Chris Lambert that you want. There's also a little special shout out to Travis showing up. And if you want to see my fridge, where's my fridge? There's me at the fridge. You can see my kitchen. There's my kitchen, right? But yeah, there's this. There'll be a link to that. I honestly haven't watched it all yet, but I do know that they talked to some interesting people. They talked to some followers of ours, Joe DeMarco, and then Kanye for Us, which actually just ends up being, you can see here, like an Instagram conversation. So it's kind of a little bit of a more investigative deep dive into Kanye's presidential campaign. And this video went way longer than I thought it would, so I'm going to end it. If you're enjoying the channel and you want to support us, the easiest way is liking, comment, or subscribing, or unsubscribing. As those things tell YouTube that this is a channel people enjoy, and then they show it to more people. Now, if you're looking for more content, the thing that we're most well known for is Watching the Throne, a lyrical analysis of Kanye West, our podcast. We have two ways to listen, a free way and then Patreon. Currently, the free episodes are just one season is live at a time, and we're currently releasing our College Dropout 2.0 season. We made it all the way through Kanye's discography a first time, and now we're going through a second time because you learn a lot about an artist when you listen and discuss every single song that they've put out on a solo album, and then also Kids See Ghosts, right? We talked about that as well. So if you want just the free episodes and to listen to our college dropout season, you can go to Apple, Spotify, wherever. But on our Patreon, we're releasing 2 episodes a week and are currently in the midst of our late registration season. And we'll go into graduation right away after that. 808s, My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy. By the time the college dropout public episodes finish, we might be into 808s and Heartbreak, right? So there's going to be like a 3 to 6 month gap between those episodes releasing. And not only that, you're only going to get 1 season available at a time on the public feed, where on Patreon, you get the whole catalog available all at once. And that's just $5. Patreon.com/Kanye podcast. If you want to give that a listen, it will forever change the way that you listen to Kanye's music. That's, I guarantee. And until next time, stay wavy, keep it loopy. Cheers.